Welcome back to episode 8. This is going to be part 2 of why we irrigate. Irrigation is a critical part of what we do on the farm so that we can produce high quality food at an inexpensive cost to the consumer. And if it wasn't for irrigation in the West, I would wager that the food in the United States would be 4 or 5 times higher than it is. I wonder what that number would really be. So as part of this, I need to reintroduce Darren Siekman. He's with Valley Irrigation, and he's here teaching me, right? I began the first part by asking him questions and talking about the way that we use irrigation, whether it's overhead or drip irrigation or flood irrigation on our farm. But now we're going to talk about some of the technological advances that we've seen in irrigation. So Darren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, no, thanks, Shay. So again, working in business development for Valley, it's a great opportunity. I get to travel the world. But more importantly, I get to see all of the latest technology that's out there. And again, I don't have to tell you, we can't even begin to think of, even us being in the industry, okay, there are so many people with great ideas out there. And now throw in the power of what's gone on with cloud computing and the advances in technology in general and the data that proliferates. So it's just been a really unique time now that the world is our oyster.
So when did you see, what do you think, the most significant developments? When do they start and where are they going?
I think very much in the last, it's been in the last 20 years. And by what I mean by that is you're really starting to see the ability to connect devices and the Internet of Things. And so having a cell phone drive your center pivot or drive your pump or drive your tractor or even monitor one of your bins, right?
Right. So it's kind of like what consumers are able to do, like that are at home now on their, you can, from your cell phone, you can open your garage door. From your cell phone, you can turn on the sprinklers on your lawn. Like we're able to do this, but an entire
Absolutely,
machine
but
that's
on an
watering
industrial scale. So, but that's the same thing. You've got a Nest or whatever your thermostat of choice is, and you forget to turn it down when you come home, or your kids happen to come home early. It's exactly the same thing on your farm. So that was the beginning of it. But then the biggest thing, Shay, has been, I'd say over these last 4 or 5 years, with the advent of what I would call cloud computing or what we can do as far as remote computing. And so we'll dive into that a little bit more because, again, Valmont, our parent company, we just had our 75th anniversary. So Mr. Doherty, Bob Doherty, our founder, came home from World War II. He invested his life savings in this patent. And lo and behold, and he's
a patent on
the center pivot irrigation.
Really? Okay.
He purchased it from a guy by the name of Frank Zyback out in the center of Nebraska. But the thing is, and so we sit around and talk about how smart we are and all this technology. He freely admitted it took him 8 years to figure it out. And what I mean figured out, make the darn thing go around in a circle and apply water and actually work. So that's the legacy that we have. It's that we know, and it's right there with your family farm has been passed down from generation to generation, right?
Right.
We know that that's how we've thought about our company. And even though I'm an employee, I grew up around this. And we're all really passionate about this because we know, first of all, you're only going to get about 40 chances to grow a crop. But we hope
that's always a painful comment, but it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But more importantly, though, if you grow this business right, the same way your family did and could hand you 40 chances, you're going to hand your kids another 40 chances and so on and so forth. So that's why we start to think about these things as not just what we can do, but what makes sense. And so that's why I want to touch on, I'll take 2 roads of here's all of the cool things that are out there that we could do. But if we don't give you as a grower an ROI, i.e. a return on investment, because again, whether it's at your house, whether it's at your farm, if you don't get some benefit from that, if you don't get the labor savings that we talked about in the last episode or the advances, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I mean, it's no different than the consumer when you go to the grocery store and you've got to decide between product X and product Y, like the cereal boxes, right? You've got to decide between those two. You've got to pick the thing that you find the most benefit in and that is really going to make a difference for you. I mean, it's cereal boxes, this is oversimplifying, but...
No, not exactly. Or, how big of a container of, what do I buy, the 5-pound sack of onions or the 10-pound sack of onions, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick on one that you touched upon briefly in the last episode is, typically it's always taken us, say, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours for a center pivot to make a circle in the field. And that's going to apply somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of water. I could do the math quick in my head, but I won't. So that's only, a 1/4 of an acre foot.
Right.
But would you see an advantage? Are there times of the year that making a 45-minute pass or a 1-hour pass would give you benefit with what you
applying water or not applying water?
Take your pick. I'll let you choose.
Yeah. Certainly from an application standpoint, I look at the ability to put a fungicide on or something. I mean, the less time that you're going around. Well, let's say you just watered, right? So we just watered a field. This is how I would imagine it. We just watered a field, and we get a thunderstorm, and we get everything wet again. Well, you don't really want to run a 1/4 inch of water back on that field just to get your fungicide application down. But this is when I need the fungicide. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where my brain goes.
And so again, and now I'll get to play you in this segment. You said. So why would you a fungicide? What do you mean a fungicide? Why would you apply a fungicide, and how would you normally do that?
Yeah, a fungicide. Well, I mean, there's 2 ways to apply a fungicide. I mean, either you can run it through the overhead pivot, or you'd have to run a ground rig. And if we just got rain, I guess if you're going there. If we just got rain, the ground rig's not going to go through the field. So, right. I mean, I guess you could call an airplane and you can do that. But the reason that we've all gone away from airplanes, at least in our operation when it comes to onions, is the effectiveness, right? You're flying an airplane over a field at 130 miles an hour at 15, 20 feet, whatever. You just don't get the application consistency.
And again, I'll put words in your mouth, at a minimum of $10 an acre, maybe more.
Yeah. The cost is certainly higher. Right. Absolutely. It costs more and it's less effective.
So once again, and again, obviously I'm here representing Valley, but any center pivot or any overhead application that's basically remote control for the field. So that's one of the things that we're most excited about as we think about our future state is you've got a robot in the field. So why would you not, like you said, let's just pick on fungicide for the minute. Why would you not? Because again, to run it around the field once at most is a couple dollars an acre.
You know the number better.
And what I mean by that is most of
you're saying electricity only.
Exactly, because you're just doing a very, very low speed pump or a very low output pump for fungicide, and you're just running the machine itself. That's probably even less than that. But
so are some people actually running a separate, not running it through the water? I mean, is that happened yet where there's just like a spray nozzle on the center pivot?
Right. And
that does happen.
That does happen.
Okay.
And it happens in various different ways.
Okay.
So but to your point, that's one of the biggest opportunities we have is whether it's via a separate delivery system or a set of nozzles that we have that require much, much less water. Because again, like you said, if I've just gotten a rainstorm or already have sufficient irrigation on the field, I don't need more water. But again, most of today's, especially herbicides, but a fungicide, they can't be diluted that much that you would through a normal irrigation sprinkler head. So that's one of our advances that we have. So I'm kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Sorry, I'm geeking out on you. But first of all, we want to run the pivot faster than we do today, which is a technology we just released. But then have a whole separate delivery system for a fungicide, for a herbicide that's out there.
That makes sense. I mean, it really does make sense. I've never thought of, my naivete here, but I've never thought of a spray nozzle or some different type of nozzle actually being available to do the application.
And once again, that's our challenge is we've had products over the years, but they never caught on commercially. They were either too clunky, too expensive. And so that's where the onus is on me, and I'm just saying me, the team at Valley and the industry to put out those sorts of products. So then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I've got this thing in the field. Why in the heck can I use it for X and Y and Z?
Okay. I've got a question for you that's going to be a slight digression here. We can take this out if we have to, or we'll leave it in. But I'm always interested. First of all, we're both lefties. I want everyone to notice that we're both lefties, so we're really special.
That's what Mom said anyway.
Yeah, at least Mom said. At least. Yeah, and the guy behind the camera is left-handed too. There's 3 of us in a room. This is rare, right? How, as a business owner and someone who's tried to grow our family operation to a larger scale over the last 15 years, what is it that has happened within Valley? You obviously have, as a company, this motivation to maintain your customers, to grow your business, and to satisfy the needs of your customers, but none of you are owners, or very few of you. And I'm always intrigued by that because I feel like that's the next leap that I have to make. And so obviously, so you're talking about all these technological advances. So you guys have come up with these ideas, but what would you say are the strengths of Valley internally as an organization that motivates you personally to improve the business? Sure.
So again, I don't want to get hokey here, right? So I'll hit it from two perspectives, and hopefully this will all stick, but if not, we have a confidence in the guy behind the camera to edit it down, right? So for me personally, growing up around agriculture, but never really having the opportunity to take over a family operation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not uncommon, right? I mean,
it's rare.
Brothers, sisters, consolidations, different family scenarios. So that was never really on the table for me, but yet the passion around growing things and the passion around, the biggest capitalistic venture in the whole world, right? Because you think of American farmers, you think about who takes risks and who absolutely is out there every day living their values. So I'll take that for me personally, and that it's just the challenge of it. But I think that folds well into Valley, because we have 4 core values at Valley, or at Valmont Industries. The first one is passion. Okay.
You got that.
We've got that. And again, and people that don't, then typically they may not stay at our company very long. The second one is integrity. And even if we just met, but the point is you don't stay in business for 75 years if you don't act as a company with integrity. I'm not going to say we're perfect, but again, I want to make sure that when I see you next year, when I see you 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if you've bought a Valley, or even if you haven't bought a Valley, but we still have had the kind of interaction, that means, I'm going to at least say hello to him on the street, and hopefully we're going to talk about how our product has helped you, and if not, we'll say, hey, here's what's changed for the last time. 2 more, and so those are the first 2 that Mr. Doherty gave us. Then the second 2, and we've only had 3 CEOs. That's one of the things that helps, right? So even though there's publicly traded company, yes, you can go track our stock on the stock market, but the last 2 are continuous improvement. So again, if you don't wake up every day, because we're coming off, and you've seen this, we've both seen this in our times, right? We think back to 2012, 2013, and the kind of commodity prices we had and the way that net farm incomes looked. We're coming off a really great run here, either, who knows why, right? When you think about the pandemic, but regardless, the numbers say we're coming off a great run. But for us, that's not enough. Right? You have to wake up tomorrow and do better, because to your point, there's somebody in another country that wants to do better. There's an operation down the road that's trying to do better. Even though we're friends, we're continually trying to get better. And then the last one is deliver results. So once again, I think that speaks well to, you can say, well, a public company has to deliver quarterly results to shareholders. But if I don't deliver results to my customers, we're out of business. So again, hopefully that wasn't too long. I didn't take too circuitous of a route, but that's kind of how that's how we think about it, and I think all of our leadership embodies that.
So you think the example of leadership is critical in setting the standard for how the company moves forward and how the employees operate within the company?
I think so. I absolutely. And the only reason I say that is that, like I said, we've got 10,000 employees across the world. Now, granted, some of those are making sign poles, and some of those people are working on galvanizing and making utility poles. But the point is, for the people that prosper at Valmont and have had long careers at Valmont, they've embodied that spirit. And again, you may not have passion about what we do, because like we said, we've hoped that if you're not really into ag, you're still listening by this point. But the point is, you can have passion about other things, and that's great. Go pursue those opportunities. Right.
Well, and I think one of the things about it that you're saying is your passion for agriculture, and I think that's one thing that's missing. I didn't mean to turn this into such a tangent, but for you and the people that work for you, or those that are still listening and are somewhat interested by this, you're interested in something about agriculture, something that's intrinsically within you and what you believe in. And there's so many different aspects of agriculture. I have so many people that ask me like, hey, Shay, how do I start farming? Or hey, Shay, how can I come work for you? Or, well, you don't have to come work for me and you don't even have to work on a farm. There's so many places within agriculture where you can have a meaningful impact.
And for us, like I said, one of the cool parts of my job is I get to travel the world. And so as you can imagine, it's not just the economy of it, it's the food security piece of it. So we have people now irrigating out of the Nile River, which arguably has been done for thousands of years. But they're growing a wheat crop in places that hasn't grown wheat for a very, very long time because this pandemic absolutely impacted the need for it. And the other need that happened wasn't just the transportation issues, but the root cause of it was there was drought. There's drought in key areas, not just in the U.S., but as you look across the cropping regions of the world, through Eastern Europe, through Asia, and really important areas that grew wheat weren't able to grow the wheat that they normally would over these last couple of years.
So how did the pandemic impact the like in Egypt, you're talking about growing in regions? Is
Absolutely.
It because of their concern for the security and the source of their food, or what is it that changed there?
And I mixed metaphors on you again.
Yeah.
So first of all, just plain the crop wasn't there, right? So there was drought at the exact wrong time.
Okay.
But then, more importantly, we don't have to tell anybody because this is going to impact your Christmas shopping. This impacts our day-to-day life at the store, is the container shortage and the ability to move product across the globe as a result of the pandemic hasn't just gotten more expensive. It just plain doesn't happen. And what I mean by that is boats cannot come into the port. And again, if you're a country, let's pick on our friends. I'll pick on my friends from Australia down under. If you put your country into lockdown, well, that's fine up to a degree, but that means too, you can't bring a ship into port. And whether that thing's carrying Game Boys or whether it's carrying your onions, it doesn't matter because it's not going to load because that crew can't enter the port.
You just aged yourself with Game Boys. I'm just saying. I had one of those when I was a kid. I'm just saying.
See,
yeah,
that's what we devolve into.
Right, that's what we go back to.
Exactly.
Game Boys. So what else can you tell us about the technology? Like we talked about the highest rate of speed.
So let's go second. So the other piece we talked about, Shay, was if we do run that pivot through the field at, say, in a 45-minute circle instead of a 2 or 3 hour circle, and you said, well, what do I want to do with that? Well, we over the last 2 or 3 years had a relationship with a company in Israel that we recently just purchased called Prospera, and so we're hanging cameras on that center pivot. So yes, you can use a drone. Yes, you can use a satellite. But what we're doing is actually putting cameras on the pivot, running it around the field, and then uploading all those images to the cloud and using artificial intelligence to say, hey, you've got a problem here. And that problem might be just with your irrigation, but then also it can be to point out pests and disease as well.
Right. And what I think is really intriguing about that is if you collect that data and save that data, the ability to, maybe you didn't identify the problem in the process. It wasn't until harvest or even post-harvest, you've got a disease problem. The ability to go back and find that. It makes me think of like when they were flying these drones overhead in Iraq, right? And they would fly them 24 hours a day, and then they'd have an explosion somewhere. Someone would set off an IED, and they could follow that back in time and find the source, right? Because they had collected and saved that data. And that's kind of how I imagine this being. Like, it's not just what you can do in real time. What is all that data that's collected going to mean 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, and hopefully sooner than that. But there's so much data that we should and can collect. But someday there's going to be an entire industry around, okay, well, here's your data. Let's figure out what all this means. We're going to understand our world so much better just because we've collected it and we can go back in time.
Absolutely. And I'll go off on a brief tangent, though, and you own that data. Yes, we may take the algorithms that help decide whether it's a potato beetle or just a grain of sand or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, we want to make sure that integrity of the data stays at the grower level. But the more we can aggregate, to your point, to start to learn those lessons, the more powerful it becomes.
Yeah. Very cool.
We are, and then the last but not least is while we're utilizing the pivot to do that, we're also utilizing satellite image, aerial images, a little bit on the drone side. And not that I'm anti-drone, it's just the fact that I don't know how much you've seen it in your operation. You want to talk about labor intensive? and hard to manipulate the data. So that's the only thing that's keeping us away from drones short term, because our other divisions are using it, and I know we have growers utilizing it. But once again, what we do really well is those broad field, broad applications. And so that's why we're so excited about that, is it really leverages, once again, the only thing that's in the field all year long, all day long, all day, all night, that you can use that to start to collect that data.
Yeah, and I'm sure the guy behind the camera will understand this better, but it seems like a consistent location on that pivot going over the same exact spot every single time would be light years better than...
Absolutely,
than,
and it's
a
not,
drone.
And I say cameras in a very
he's not
loose
not his
sense
head.
of,
Yes,
and I use the term camera in a very loose sense of the word, because these are
infrared. And,
absolutely. So we're in so we're multispectral. We're using thermal imagery as well, so that way you can really start to hone in on where those problems are occurring, and again, things not visible to the naked eye. So that's what gets again. That's what, and again, you can say, "Wow, you guys have totally geeked out now." But when you start to think about, again, where it's going to go and where we can go, and that ties right back to not just are we going to make you more money, we're being better environmental stewards. Think about it when you being back to your fungicide application or back to an insecticide application. Now, if we're just spot spraying that,
right,
only utilizing
and you can see exactly where it is, right? Because you identified it. That would be really cool. Like if you talk about fungicide, it starts in a single point in the field, usually on an edge, but it doesn't matter. It could start anywhere because it's wetter. Who knows, some environmental condition. You see that, you identify it, and you go and attack that. Like soon, you could do a spot application of a fungicide. I mean, that's something that's relatively unheard of today.
Right.
But you could do
and once again, the technology exists. We have technology that can do that. I haven't proven that it can give you the ROI on it yet, and that we've got the right delivery vehicle. The only other thing I was going to add back on seeing it ahead of time is we've also been, since we didn't have the cameras fully deployed as much as we want, we did fly planes in this part of the world, more over in Washington and Oregon, but a little bit in Idaho. And that was the thing that was the most gratifying, was we had a couple of our producers that said, you know what, you guys told me I had a problem, but I couldn't see it. So I waited, and sure enough, within somewhere between 7 and 10 days later, it showed up. So back to your fungicide example, back to your insecticide example, if you only can apply right there and you're doing it a week ahead of time, again, that's
more effective, less of it, possibly. I mean, you can just imagine where this could go, as you look into the future. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah, and again, I think that's. And I'll come full circle back on the 40 chances. And I think if you can set up that time of operation for your kids, man, that's very, very powerful. Because now you've added to your company's balance sheet and as well as your bottom line, and that's what this is about. I mean, it's okay to say that. I really like that.
It's okay.
It's in one of your prior podcasts, and I know I teased our CEO about being your biggest fanboy, but that was something that was so refreshing. Because again, not to get all hokey, but yes, we're a for-profit company, and we're not going to apologize for that. But you are a for-profit company, and neither should you apologize.
Right. And to Derek's point, when he was talking about this before, he's alluding to a previous podcast with Derek Josie, but we talked about like what we can do if we are profitable. So we have all these demands on us, all these things that we're asked to do, and we're willing to do them, and we'll do them even better. But we can't use, let's say electric tractors come on board. There's nothing out there now, but so right now it's a tier 4 high super. I mean, the emissions coming out of the tractor are lower than, the air surrounding the tractor. I mean, they're essentially literally filtering in the air in the process of running. But let's say an electric tractor was out there. Well, an electric tractor is going to be expensive. So unless we're profitable, purchasing and utilizing an electric tractor is not going to be an option for us. Like, profit still has to be the motivator, and that motivation can create things that are higher sustainability.
So I think, and this is totally unfair, Shay, because I've given you these little snippets, and we just got done harping on the fact that every one of these advances has to pencil for your operation. And we know that not just across the U.S., but across the globe, everybody farms a little bit differently. But knowing what you know, and again, you're a futuristic guy. So as you see these technologies become not just available, but adopted.
Right.
where's that going to lead us? I mean, yes, we can hypothesize about, your kids now having a much more profitable operation and land. And I don't know what land is around here, but if we're saying land in my lifetime's gone from 2,000 or 3,000 an acre to 10,000 an acre to 20,000 an acre, whatever the case may be. But what does that mean for you? Where do you think that's going to lead us as agriculturalists, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly like the profitability is critically important, and it will stay and remain critically important. But what a lot of people don't understand is that when we look at agriculture and we're making decisions on our farm, we are always thinking generationally. We're forced to think generationally. We're not thinking about next year's profit or the next year's profit. We're really thinking about, really, my oldest is 9 years old, and I'm already thinking about, okay, what does this, you're making acquisitions, you're borrowing money, you're growing a brand, you're doing all these things. What's it going to mean for them? And that part is we're never going to get that out of ag. We're never going to remove that from agriculture, I don't think. And whether it's a family farm or a corporate farm, I think the corporate farm gets a bad name, but they still have to be thinking decades into the future in order to try and position themselves in such a way that they'll be there decades into the future.
But what about that sustainability piece then? Do you see kind of a convergence of sustainability, for lack of a better term? Because again, whether it's mandated through whatever policy we want, does it just become what now is, say, industry standard, industry accepted? So does organic and conventional still mean the same thing for your 9-year-old as it does for
No,
you and
I don't think so. No, I think organic and conventional with the technology that you're talking about, this spread that exists from one side, the organic being on one extreme and conventional being on the most opposite extreme. They're converging. They're getting closer and closer and closer all the time. And I always like to talk about common sense practices. Organic production on our farm at our location, geographically, in this microclimate, is less effective than it is in other locations. Like for us to grow organic produce here, can we do it? Yes. But can we do it as sustainably? And the truth is that we can. And you can talk about herbicide uses. You can talk about human labor factors. You can talk about weed pressure. You can talk about the source of our water. What about just
the barrier to entry?
Oh, the barrier to entry, right, yeah.
Just saying, hey, well, I'm going to take this land out of production for X amount of seasons.
All of that too. Yeah, I mean, it's just we're going to get narrower and narrower. It's going to get more and more and more common. And these common sense practices, I hope, is where the consumer goes and where we continue to go with agriculture. We're definitely using less water. We're using fewer inputs. We're doing less pesticide and herbicide applications. I mean, every single year we're using less, not more. And so we're getting closer to what we would call organic production today, and within regular agriculture on a daily basis. And as we get closer, I hope that the stigma with what we traditionally do as farmers, as conventional farmers, goes away, and people realize that we're doing the very best that we can for our families, for our future, and for the environment all at the same time. And it's getting, I don't want to say it's getting easier, but technology is helping us to do that more effectively every step of the way.
And that the one that's exciting for me, and now I'll put my consumer hat on, and we're already seeing this come from some of our larger food company customers, is not just traceability, but then the transparency. I mean, you're super transparent here, right?
Right.
But you have to kind of want to go look at it, right? I mean, if the consumer doesn't care, he's not going to go.
Right, you're not going to see anything. Exactly.
But now it's going to become very, very, I wouldn't say easy, but once again, industry standard and not onerous for someone to go back and have those records available to say, hey, I'm eating this, whether it's a corn chip, whether it's one of your onions, and know, hey, here's
You're
how
thinking
much.
blockchain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That is actually an interesting thought to think, if I want the information, it's available to me, like to the bag of chips, right? Yeah. I mean, blockchain would allow you to okay, I've got that bag of chips. I know what field and farm and day it was packed and all that information, protected in the right way, but available to you.
And again, it's to our advantage because, again, that's something that exists today. So you can come in and see exactly how much water was applied, when it was applied, how you did it.
Yeah.
And again, do you want to talk about carbon footprint? Okay, did I use a bunch of diesel fuel on a power unit to generate this, or did I use solar energy to generate the energy to pump the water onto the field?
Right. Right.
So that's
the accountability that you're talking about is really cool, because that's another piece that's a pet peeve of mine is, I like marketing. I love, you guys can tell from the content that I produce that I love talking about agriculture and what we do and why we do it. But there's nothing I hate more than people who just have a really good marketing message, but that's what it is as a marketing message. It just drives me crazy to just see, the whether it's, demonizing an industry or whether it's, patting yourself on the back when you don't deserve it. There's nothing more frustrating than that, because I just want you guys to know, I want everyone to know the truth in what we're doing. You got to make your decision. And sometimes that hurts us, right? You get to see everything that we're doing and you're like, hey, Shay, I don't like that you're doing that. But at least you get to see it and understand why we do it. And then you can make your own decision based on what you're able to see, instead of someone trying to spin a story in a way that convinces you one way or another.
No, I think that's super evident. And again, I haven't gotten to do it for the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but we would have some school kids come out as part of a summer school class, and just that basic, and again, I'm preaching the choir on this, but just, hey, do you understand what this machine is doing? Do you understand where your food's coming from? And when you walk down the aisle of the grocery store, what's that do for you? So again, this is all part of it. And the nice part is, again, I can wake up every morning and look in the mirror and say, I'm helping you make money. I'm helping you use less resources to do it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Thanks for the education. Thanks for the opportunity to talk through this. I hope everyone that's followed along, especially you non-ag people that have followed along for this long, that you gain something. For those of you that are in the industry, if you're in the industry, you know how key of a player Valley is, and the efforts that they make through their dealers, through your local reps that are there to really try and take care of you. We have Roman's Machinery. Is that what they're calling it now? Because they changed their name. What are they calling it? It used to be RPM, Roman's Parts and Machinery, but I don't know what they're calling it now.
Okay, well, I just know Kurt and Roman's Irrigation. So
Roman's Irrigation.
So once again, we'll have to work on their market. And I'm sure he's going to say we took too many co-op dollars from him, and he should have been able to get better branding on that. But that's a big deal, because again, this is a premium product. I'm sitting here telling you how cheap it is. Well, let's face it, the average center pivot is going to cost a minimum of over $100,000, right? I mean, right. And granted, that's on a 120 acre field. But we have to have that support. So that's the other thing that's brought us since day one over these 75 years is that local support and those local dealers. And that's something that we're not going to stray away from. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm in just as much of a service industry as what you're in, and if we don't come through at the end of the day, there's a number of people lined up to do our job for us or better than us and take that business from them. So we will continue on our end to do the same thing. And there's the whole thing about, imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, right? And we don't have to go very far across the water, and we have multiple people copying our designs, places that don't protect and adhere to intellectual property the same way we do here. And so whether we like it or not, that's the world in which we live in. So one more way that we differentiate from that is having, again, somebody like Romans there that they're going to come out on the 4th of July. They're going to come out on a Sunday afternoon because they know when that machine is down, it's costing you money. Right.
That's a big part of, all of us being viable. We're a big team together within agriculture. We all are interdependent. As farmers and as an industry, agriculture is constantly fighting to make more with less and to have an impact on the world that we live in. And Darren, what is it that you guys at Valley are striving to do to create that global impact?
It's as easy as our corporate tagline, which is conserving resources and improving life.
Pretty straightforward.
All
right. Thank you. Thanks for listening to episode 2. Again, those of you that aren't in ag that are here, I am proud of you for staying in this long. I geek out, to use Darren's terms here, quite a bit too. And I just love the industry that we're in, the compassion, the passion, the people, and the product that we have to share with you on a daily basis. We get to share a meal with you. We're at your dinner table, whether you invited us or not, and we're just glad to be there. And hopefully you've learned something along the way here. If you have, hit that like and subscribe button, follow along, and go take a look at Valley and see if you can learn a bit more about them and the cool technology that they're bringing to the world that we exist in today. See you guys later.